I love buildings with sharp angles like this one, and when the sunlight is shining so harshly and brightly, it creates really interesting lights and darks, that contrast. Let's see if we can capture some of that on our phone here. Now, just waving the 1x lens up there, and that looks really nice. We've got the sun cascading across frame with all of the different angles on the windows of this building create some really interesting shadows and shapes. So I'll get that, although I think I've seen something a little bit more interesting on reflection. And reflection's the key here, because look on the floor in front of me. The sun is shining in and the reflections of that sunlight are hitting the road in front of me, and it's creating these lovely kind of light streaks across. Look at those glorious shapes all cascading towards me. So I'm trying to think of a few ways of capturing that, because with this 1x lens, if I'm to get the entirety of the building in and not create a kind of unpleasant crop at the top, then I'm going to lose a lot of the reflection. So I'm just going to angle down and favor the reflection instead. That's not a bad shot. Let me just try with the wide-angled lens. Oh, there we go. So with this, we can very much get the building and those reflections in. I've just got a little bit of pollution from the building work on the left, so I'm just going to change the frame a little bit here. Just watching my verticals. There we go. So I've pretty much got my building of interest in the middle of the frame there. Just cropping out the building work to the left, and I can get a lot of the reflection in. Right, and then finally, just while I've got the light here, I'm going to go to my detail lens, the 2x lens. Let me just see very quickly, I'm not sure this is going to work with a detail. Now my 2x lens, normally if I'm shooting a building, I'll just focus on a small section, but actually, what if I focus just on the reflections instead? Well, just on the reflections, they become a bit orphaned. I don't really have any context. I don't really know what it is I'm looking at. It's just a bit too abstract to be successful, I think. But if I split the difference, so I can see the building, it's got a little hint of sky on the top left, and I've got those reflections, it immediately becomes clear where those are coming from. Right, you've got to work quickly when you're capturing little serendipitous moments like this. Let's see if it's worked. This was my starter shot when my initial focus was on this building. Now, I think in that regard, it's an interesting shot. We've got what looks like a shot taken at twilight, but with some of the lights in the rooms here switched on. But no, this is just the sun cascading across the frame and creating these lovely bits of contrast, the light and the shade. So that is all good. However, the effect that the sun has on the ground in front of the building is completely lost here, and I've soon decided that that was the more interesting area to kind of capture. With this shot, I've gone for half and half really. I've tried to capture some of the building, but then I've tried to capture some of the impact that the sun shining on that building has. So we've got these rays, these reflections cascading across the bottom half of the frame in all directions. It's a fairly clean shot as well. There's one or two people in the background there, but we're in the city in the middle of the day. Of course that's going to happen. We've got a bit of sky on the left here as well to kind of contextualize. I think this is a fairly successful shot. Sometimes you review an image that you shot and you start to see things that you just never saw in the moment, and that's how I feel with this. First of all, the angles on here, our building of interest creates this lovely triangle at the top of the frame. The perspective game with this building on the right falling into really the center of the frame as well. The negative space that the blue for the sky presents. And then of course we've got the rays of the sun, the inverted rays of the sun, but of course they're not coming from the sun, they're being reflected from the lights in this building. And one could almost imagine that this were a long exposure photo, and we've got some vehicles moving across the frame. Also very, very pleasingly, there are no actual vehicles, there are no people in here. It is a completely clean shot. This is just another example of the serendipity of city photography. Sometimes you never quite know what you're going to find. And it's a joy when you do find a shot like this. I'm very happy.